Good morning traders, welcome to this interface demonstration part 2. In the first video we talked through this main trendline configuration interface here. As you can see, there are quite a few other controls down here, but a whole selection of buttons. We've talked about the rescan chart button, which can be used to simply rescan the chart when a trader has drawn an additional trend line on the chart. The system does actually auto-sense when new trend lines are drawn on the chart, but if tick data is quite slow, you can use this rescan button as well to force the system to rescan. Okay, so setup. When you first load the system, you will get this interface coming up automatically, and you need to set the MT4 path. So to do that, you just click Set Path, you navigate to your Program Files folder, and then you select your MT4 root folder and go to Experts, then go to Files and simply click Open, and that sets the path, which is very important. The system will not work unless you do that. So if we move down these controls now, so for example, we can see here we've selected this trend line 40086, which corresponds to this trend line on the chart here. It's configured as a sell touch trend line, so basically when price action touches the trend line within the sensitivity area, which is plus or minus 2 pips, a short trade triggers. Notice here that the break controls and retrace controls are grayed out. So the reason that is because we haven't configured the trend line for that type of trade behavior. So if we went to a break type scenario, in this case we'd be configure the trend line as a buy break, so we'd want the system to basically place a long trade if price action broke through this trend line, and we're defining a break close X candles. And what that means is you can specify by clicking on the break controls up here, you can specify the number of candles you want the trade to trigger at. So for example, if you want to wait until the price action is basically closed 2 candles above the trend line, just put 2 in that figure there. We also have other break controls. So for example, if you wanted to just place the trade when price action closed above the line, just say trade behavior is break close. You can also have another behavior which is called break close in a defined range. So in this case we can go back into our break controls, and we can see here we have a defined pip range. So we can tell the system we want to only take trades when the price action has closed above the trend line in this case, and the values, or the price is between 2 and 28 pips away from the trend line. So those are our break controls. We also have retrace controls, where the trend line can be touched and then price action can then bounce off it and then come back again to test it. And we can set parameters for our retrace functions here in terms of the minimum retrace period and the maximum retrace period. So if we set it as 1 and 5, basically price action would come up, test the line, get rejected, and then if price action then retested the trend line again within the next 1 to 5 bars or periods, the retrace trade would be executed. What we also have, we'll just move this back to a sell touch based trade, which is in tune with the current trend. So notice these break and retrace controls have been grayed out again. We have profit controls. So if I look at what this is set up for at the moment, we're looking at 2 take profit levels, one at 50% of the lot size, which is the moment we're trading 0.4 lots on this trade. So you take the first take profit target would be 50% at 20 pips, so basically 0.2 lots, and the remainder, the other 0.2, i.e. 50% of 0.4, would be taken at 40 pips. So we can define exactly how we scale out of this trade. If we have a sufficient lot size to do so, it's worth remembering that, because if you set this up with lots 0.1, MT4 would not be able to take a partial close because it can't divide the 0.1 lots. Okay, so that's profit controls. Display controls, we have a very rich set of display options here. Firstly, in the line control area down here, we can change all sorts of things like the trend line color and the trend line style. So I change it to blue, change it to dotted, save those changes, and you can see the trend line has been changed to a dotted blue line now. In exactly the same way, we can change our stop loss and take profit levels. Once the orders are placed, we can change both the color, line, style and length of those levels. We can extend them into the future using the ray function, and we can also show the TP and SL data above the levels as well. In the same way, we have a grid function. So for example, if I click on show grid and save that, you can see here on the chart it's displayed a grid which basically shows us where our stop loss levels and take profit levels are. If I go back to display controls and turn show TP grid data and show SL grid data on and click save, you will see the data is then populated above and below the stop loss and take profit levels. So what we're seeing here is 40086 is the trend line number. The square brackets, the data in the square brackets is the symbol and time frame data, so Eurodollar 60, i.e. the hourly chart we're on now. TP2 is the second take profit target, and 50% is the amount that's going to scale out, and the same thing with TP1. Up here we have the same data for the stop loss level. So we can use these levels when you're setting up your initial targeting levels in your profit control area. You can adjust these levels accordingly, and when you click save, those are reflected in the grid. So you can just basically, depending on price action, support and resistance, all that kind of stuff, pivots, etc., you can use the grid to basically set these levels exactly where you want them on the chart. So once you're happy with that, you just click show grid, turn it off, apply those settings, and the grid will then disappear. Okay, so as well as display controls, we have filter controls. So if we want to base trades based on a defined filter, we've got a range of indicator filters. These are oscillators here, and we can specify particular levels. So we can say only accept the trade when the entry conditions are met based on the trend line sensitivity and the behavior we've defined earlier on, but only take it when also an indicator filter is satisfied. And we can say, okay, that action, maybe the RSI is greater than 5 and less than 10, whatever you want to do. Here you can define those parameters. So that's a quick overview of the core functionality of the interface. The next videos will start to go into a bit more detail about particular scenarios and talk through actually how the interface works in conjunction with MT4 in some demo scenarios. Thanks very much for listening.